Welcome back to another episode of the Northern Dispatch. It's been quite a week in Canadian politics. Justin Trudeau has lost his most loyal and closest political ally, the woman who was by his side for the last 9 years, carrying his government's agenda. Chrystia Freeland is gone in a blaze of glory, I should say, in a scathing public statement, which we are going to get to. And she's not the only cabinet minister who has left this week. Sean Fraser, I guess you could call him a disgraced former minister who was responsible for the housing disaster. And before that, the immigration disaster is also gone. Guys, what a week here. How much longer is Justin Trudeau going to hold on to power?
Oh, that's the magical question, right? I think his ego is going to make it a lot tougher for him to actually depart. There seems to be something personal about him and Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, and the other problem is that before Trudeau became leader of the party, the Liberal Party got rid of the function within their constitution that permits them to remove a leader. The only time that they can review leadership is after essentially a disastrous incident such as a failed election, failed by-election, etc.
Well, we'll have to see if he decides to hold on, if he decides to go through this mutiny. It'll just make for at least some interesting content for us, but unfortunately, probably pretty rough results for the country. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show today, let's read some comments from the last episode. The first one here comes from Linda Watson, 8312. She writes, Trump knows Canadians want Trudeau gone. Trump wants to help us, not harm us. Well, I sure hope so, because if he doesn't want to harm us, it's not like we can do much about that.
Agreed.
The next comment is from Wifer Stress 2824. It says, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. From Thomas Soul.
And we have Daryl Kenneth, 9902. Money for illegal immigrants and housing, but deducts taxes on disability benefits for those who paid into their pensions for 40 years, knocking it down to less than welfare recipients. Then pensioners have to go to welfare for top-ups to keep above the poverty line. And, we hear about this every single day of seniors skipping meals, of seniors moving in with their kids because they just can't afford to live anymore. And it's a sad state of affairs in Canada.
Well, speaking of the sad state of affairs, that was what we were discussing last episode, and we asked the question to all of you watching: if you think that Justin Trudeau is intentionally manipulating the economy for political points, I'm shocked about this result. I really am. 97% of you agreed. Wow, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, and that no could be a statistical anomaly.
I think those were oopses.
Yeah, I think so at that point. Well, the new poll question, which is pinned to the top of this YouTube video, you can find it in the comments section. The new poll question is, will Justin Trudeau lead the Liberal Party into the next election? We will be we'll be announcing the results of that on January 9th, because we are taking some time away for the Christmas break, but we'll be reading the results of that poll on January 9th. What do you guys think? Do you think that Trudeau's going to lead the Liberals in 2025 for the next election?
I think he's going to try. I don't know if he's going to succeed, but I think he's going to try.
I think he's going to be facing immense pressure even over the holidays. I think the closer we get to that inauguration day of Donald Trump, the more pressure is going to be ramping up. And I think Donald Trump is just going to be poking him every single day just for fun, because that's what Donald Trump does. And the Canadian media is just going to go bananas every time he does it. So that's the interesting thing about this whole dynamic is Trump can poke Trudeau, and there's nothing that Trudeau can do about it.
Absolutely nothing at all. I thought that before the Chrystia Freeland debacle, before this even worse mutiny that he's now facing, I did think that Trudeau would hold on as leader and lead the party through, but I just don't see it. At this point, I don't see him sticking it out for the year just to get absolutely crushed. I think his ego, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit here, potentially dangerous, but I'm going to say that he's smart enough to know that for his own ego, he doesn't want to lose right? He'll want to go out on top as Prime Minister, leave someone else to be the next Kim Campbell, leave them holding the bag, and forced to take a massive L, just so he can say he went out on top and never lost. But let's get into what has triggered all of this and what is driving the news cycle and likely will be for the next month. And that is Chrystia Freeland's resignation. We knew that she was under pressure, right? We knew that she was likely going to be forced out of her job, but nobody saw it coming on Monday morning. Nobody saw it coming in the way that it did, with this very scathing public resignation letter calling out Justin Trudeau for playing political games, as she writes, costly political gimmicks in response to the Donald Trump tariff threat. Guys, it feels like this Donald Trump tariff threat has been dominating this show since we started. It's crazy. He's basically pulling strings in this country.
Well, I think a lot of Canadians forget what the Donald Trump era was the first 4 years. It feels like so long ago, but it was only a little over 4 years ago that he was in, and he dominated virtually all news cycles in North America and even around the world, because you never knew what he was going to do or say next, and that was the thing about it. But the whole thing about this as well is that even the circumstance around Chrystia Freeland and this Zoom call that she had with Justin Trudeau, and the conversation that has been reported on by the Globe and Mail, by National Post, and everybody else except CBC, was that he had essentially said, you're going to be fired, but you're going to be fired after you read the economic statement, and then that position is going to go to Carney. And then yesterday, CBC was putting out this misinformation piece on the fact that Pierre Poilievre was a lying politician trying to say this. And she said that no credible journalist has actually reported on this. It's like, hello, CBC, do you not actually pay attention to what your other peers are reporting? Because that's what he was going off of.
Tanya, do you think that Chrystia Freeland took this opportunity to inflict maximum damage on Justin Trudeau, that she timed this just so that it would be, as has been reported, his worst day as Prime Minister?
Well, when we were discussing this on Northern Perspective, Ryan had made the comment that he thinks she's doing this in an effort to have a leadership bid. And I mean, you know the saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. So I think she went for maximum damage. And if it is her intention to run as leader of the Liberal Party, she's trying to come out strong, trying to come out as, you don't get to tell me what to do. You can't replace me. I'm going to replace you.
It's interesting, Ryan, we were reading reports from the Liberal Christmas party, which Chrystia Freeland attended with her family. And the reporting was that she was like a superstar in the room. All these party staffers wanted to take selfies with her and shake her hand, and they gave her a standing ovation. Even in the caucus meeting, they gave her a standing ovation. It looks as though there could be a palace coup happening here. We don't usually think about the Liberal Party outside of Justin Trudeau. We're now getting that opportunity to see what might happen. Do you think that she has any chance of succeeding as a potential Liberal leader? I don't see it.
I think she thinks she does. This just feeds into I think, how out of touch all of the cabinet is, because polling in terms of the probability of people wanting her as a candidate has never been above 20%. So, the metric for none of the above in terms of the potential candidates for the next leader of the Liberal Party was at like 26, 27%, and all of the actual candidates were below that. But I think Chrystia Freeland thinks that she's made a very brilliant maneuver here. I think it was in terms of doing damage to Justin Trudeau, and I think she's trying to play this correctly. In that caucus meeting, there was a source in there that actually said that she went up and hugged Justin Trudeau. So I think she's trying to be the bigger person, trying to play the martyr, and to show that, I'm just another woman that this fake feminist is actually damaging here. So I think she thinks she's going to be, but yeah, I agree with you. When it comes down to the actual party voting for, all bets are off, because all of these potential candidates, including Mark Carney, nobody wants them. So it's going to be interesting to see who actually emerges on top.
Yeah, I think that Freeland and her supporters underestimate just how unpopular she is with the Canadian public. I mean, you may have their core supporters, like the people who are diehard liberals, who really want Chrystia Freeland in that role, who really want a female prime minister, but the rest of us in the country really, really dislike her. I think the stats show that.
Well, and I just say, you know what? If Trudeau is going to step down, please give us Chrystia Freeland. Just from a news perspective, please put her in that role, because that would essentially cement the Liberals dropping into the basement after the next election.
Right? And think about the damage that Chrystia Freeland would do if she somehow ends up as a prime minister for 4 months, maybe even fewer months than that. She still has to represent this country at the negotiating table across from Donald Trump, who she accused of being a tyrant while he was president the first time during the USMCA negotiations. She, to me, is just nowhere near the top of my list for who I would want to be the prime minister, a temporary prime minister. I think about someone like Dominic LeBlanc, someone like Francois Philippe Champagne. I mix up the French, the Quebecers sometimes. I mix up their names. But those two guys have really escaped a lot of criticism. They've managed to escape the attacks from the Liberal government's failures for the most part. They're usually never looked at as responsible for Liberal failures. I think of the people that could take the job over, it looks as though Dominic LeBlanc is probably going to be the interim prime minister, in my opinion, at least. But let's look at what's going on here now. The fallout. Jagmeet Singh is now calling for Justin Trudeau's resignation. He called for it on Monday. This is a big departure from what has been reported in the past. He's now completely flipped. When is a confidence vote going to be called? And when is this guy going to be forced to face the music, guys?
Well, it's just the latest. I would say I don't even have words for Jagmeet Singh anymore in his quote unquote strategy, because not even 1 week before he voted to keep Trudeau in power via the confidence vote and voted against his own words, and then not even days later, the Liberal government for the third time ordered a union back to work through the CIRB, and I think he is just trying to get ahead of what everyone can see is a disaster for Justin Trudeau. Yet he's not calling for the Liberal government to have an election. He just wants Justin Trudeau to step down. So what that says to Canadians is, I'm okay with everything the government has done. It's just Justin Trudeau is the problem. And he is not seizing the moment that he needs to demonstrate himself to be a leader, or to demonstrate himself to be what he says he wants to be, which is the next Prime Minister of Canada. But in terms of a confidence vote, it's going to depend on what types of votes end up coming in through the House, because what everyone needs to remember is, just because we're going to the Christmas break, that doesn't mean the House is not going to be seized when we come back. So the question of privilege will continue on the SDTC scandal. If that is somehow dealt with, there is at least one or two other questions of privileges that the Conservatives have lined up to continue to have the House seized. So you may only have a scheduled opposition day from Chrystia Freeland. You may have Greg Fergus have to actually schedule something to do with the finances or the budget, or an opposition day, in order for a confidence vote to actually come about.
Yeah, but Peter Gillian pretty much admitted that the NDP won't be ready to vote non-confidence until late February, early March. I wonder why that is.
Well, and it was very, very strange, because that was vastly different than what Jagmeet was saying. All he was saying is all options are on the table. But when cornered, CBC actually made Peter Gillian say, well, yeah, we would vote non-confidence if Trudeau was still around late February, early March, which strangely enough, that's around Jagmeet's pension time.
Now, to play devil's advocate, would it not be politically strategic for the NDP to just ask for Justin Trudeau to resign? Because clearly a Pierre Poilievre government is going to do even worse for the NDP agenda than a Liberal government would. Even though it's unpopular, they still have their own interests. They know that they can get things done with the Liberal government and they're not going to get it with the Pierre Poilievre government at all. So, I mean, of course he's not going to call for an immediate election, right?
Well, it all depends on what Jagmeet Singh's endgame is and how much the NDP accepts reality, because that's the one thing that's been missing from the NDP strategy. Look at the Bloc, for example. The Bloc knows they are not going to be the majority party. They will never be the majority party. The main goal of the Bloc is to get the most seats that they can and the most power that they can. That should be the equivalent goal of the NDP. It's unrealistic for the NDP to expect that they're going to be winning an election in the next 10 or 15 years in Canada. So the most that they can hope for is the most seats. So what did the Bloc do? The Bloc took an opportunity when the NDP ripped up the agreement, and they made a shrewd maneuver that they knew wouldn't work in terms of getting some of their bills passed, but it demonstrated to their voters that they tried to get something done. What did that result in? That resulted in increased polls for the Bloc. And then when the Liberals didn't hold up their end of the bargain, like Yves Blanchette knew they wouldn't, what ended up happening is they stuck to their guns, kept their word, and then said, now we're going to try and bring down the government. And the Bloc has been soaring high ever since, because they're demonstrating to their voters, we will say something, we will do it, and we will keep our word. Then you have Jagmeet Singh, who he's been flip-flopping so much, nobody believes a word that he says anymore. From a strategic perspective, if I were advising them, I would say, listen, you are tied to the wagon of the Liberal brand, and whatever they do from here on in, you are going down with them. I would have advised them last March to get out of this and use pharmacare as their election platform. Now they don't have an election platform at all, except for this, take the GST off of everything. And even then, that's going to hurt them because they agreed with the Liberals and voted them for this fake GST holiday. So in terms of strategy, the NDP is sunk. I think the most realistic reason why they're waiting until next spring is to try and get more Canadians onto the next phase of the dental care program, so Jagmeet can say, see, we will bring more of this if you bring us into power, and that's all they got.
I think the NDP missed the boat. They should strike while there is the most turmoil within the Liberal government, because the Liberals and the NDP are both on the left side of the political spectrum. If the NDP worked really hard, they would be able to steal voters away from the Liberals, especially because the party is in complete chaos right now. I think for the NDP, their strategy needs to be to get as many seats as possible. Maybe if they campaigned really hard, they could even be the official opposition. I don't know if they can do it anymore. If they're not waiting now, like, they need to strike while the iron is hot, while the Liberal government and the Liberal Party is a complete disaster. And it seems like they're still willing to support this Liberal Party for some mysterious reason until the end of February or early March.
And that goes back to your point, Harrison, about if Jagmeet doesn't want Pierre Poilievre to be in government, then what he should be doing is trying like heck to get those other left-leaning voters away from the Liberals and vote for the NDP, so he can at least build the party up to a degree where it's large enough to be able to realistically hold a government to account.
You know, you look at Justin Trudeau and you watch how he has responded to this mutiny round two, because remember, he faced one after the Toronto St. Paul's disaster. This one is much worse. You look at his recent reaction, you look at what he's been saying at the Liberal Christmas party and at the Laurier Club fundraiser. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. He starts to bring out the wedge issues again. When in doubt for the Liberals, start talking about abortion. That seems to be the play with this guy. And I find that very gross, because no one in Canada is talking about abortion. The Conservatives aren't talking about this, but they just continue to use it as a weapon to attack Conservatives. Justin Trudeau uses it to wedge Canadians. And I find that it's so nasty.
It's this issue that Canadians aren't really concerned with at the moment, because we know that it's protected by our Constitution. The Liberals will trot this out anytime that they need to get a leg up on the Conservatives, but the Conservatives are not looking to ban abortion. They're not looking to restrict it. They're not looking to legislate it in any manner. So the fact that the Liberals are doing this, it's like this boogeyman issue that I think they're using to galvanize their current base. What they should be doing is looking at issues that affect a broader range of Canadians and use those issues and talk about those issues and how they're going to fix those things, and maybe draw in more people who have been Liberal in the past but are currently voting for Conservative because of the current state of the country.
Well, and I think the reason why this ace in the hole that they've been using to deal with the last Conservative attempts to overthrow them, it hasn't worked, is because the affordability crisis is so bad. That is what people are focused on. And this has come out of the blue, right? So it's been affordability, foreign interference, affordability, affordability, affordability. And then all of a sudden the Liberals say, but worry about abortion.
Right.
It is so transparent that this is nothing more than a political wedge issue that they're trying to create, and Canadians aren't buying it anymore.
You know, you look at the last public statements that we have received from Justin Trudeau and from Pierre Poilievre. Justin Trudeau is talking about, you know, the danger that women face due to a lack of access to abortion, which is not true. There are no limits on abortion. So he's talking about something that no Canadian is actually facing, no issue any Canadian is facing. And Poilievre is talking about, you know, an interaction with a waitress and an interaction with a guy who works at Labatt, talking about the difficulties that they are facing in reality, not some fictitious scenario that has been trotted out by Justin Trudeau, but real Canadians suffering from real issues caused by the government. It couldn't be more clear that they're fishing for anything they can get right now. And no surprise that in the lead up to on the anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre, the Liberals bring out another gun ban, in which they ended up banning, you know, World War II era anti-aircraft guns that no one actually owns and are already illegal. So it's obvious these guys are struggling, they are desperate, and they've got nothing. So they're just trotting out their usual wedge issues.
Well, and this just goes to show how effective that Pierre and his team have been at controlling the narrative that comes out of their caucus. Because what ends up killing political parties? It's a scandal. It's somebody makes a big misstep, and then your opponents capitalize all over it. So there hasn't really been anything that the Liberals have been able to capitalize on. So they've just resorted to the same old Liberal tactics. We just talked about that. Abortion, that hasn't worked. And so they've been trying to just manufacture a scandal out of anything, and nothing has been sticking because they are counting on Pierre Poilievre to respond to this instead of continuing to attack him like John Rustad did. And a lot of political analysts are saying that's why John Rustad didn't win the BC election, is because he started going on the defense rather than on offense. The Conservatives haven't done that. Brilliantly, Pierre is the one that keeps attacking, and if there is any defense to be run, he lets the rest of his team kind of handle that down the line. But his main job is to go after Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and that's what he's continued to do. So the fact that he's gone 2 whole years, and given the Liberals virtually nothing to work with, that is frustrating the heck out of them. And you can see it whenever Mark Miller talks. He is just so irritated. Just the other day, he was on CTV and he called Pierre an irritating SOB. Like,
Who uses that language? That's completely unparliamentary.
so they are so frustrated that they can't find any wiggle room, and they've tried everything under the sun, and their polls aren't moving. It's just a state of Canada. They're tired of this government. They're tired of Justin Trudeau, and they want to change.
I want to ask you this, Tanya, why do you think it is that we haven't seen some of these Liberal MP backbenchers, Chad Collins, Anthony Housefather, Patrick Wheeler, Sean Casey, who have been openly calling for Trudeau's resignation, who have no respect for Justin Trudeau? They're not concerned about their jobs. They're just trying to basically throw gasoline on the fire. Why do you think it is that some of them haven't crossed the floor to join the Conservatives?
I don't know. There's so many factors. We had spoken to someone who used to be a Liberal MP and had told us it's not so easy to just cross the floor. You have to worry about your staff, number one. And I mean, these staff, they are wonderful human beings trying to do a job for the country, trying to do a job for their MP, and they build these strong relationships. And to just say, okay, well, I've decided to leave the party and leave you, which you may or may not have a job after this. I think that's hard on a personal level.
Well, and the other reason is because further to the staffers that actually work for them in their parliament office, you have to consider the electoral district association that actually put them there as well, because they've been using funding and resources up to that point, and then to all of a sudden say, okay, Liberal EDA, I'm out of here. You're really going to burn a lot of bridges, and you don't even know if the Conservatives are even going to take you. I think if any of them were going to try, Pierre and the Conservatives would just shut it down, because they would be immediately criticized and open themselves to criticism from the Bloc and from the NDP in the following way. Wait a minute, Pierre, you've been saying that all these Liberals have been voting on the carbon tax, voting on this, voting on that, and create all these policies. You just accepted one of those people that has been voting for this whole time into the Conservative Party. So what message does that send to Canadians that you would be willing to accept one of these Liberals that you've been criticizing? So I think that's probably one of the reasons they haven't. As Tanya said, there's many, many reasons. So I don't think it's a possibility.
Well, and above and beyond that, the Conservatives have already chosen their candidates for many, many of the ridings. I know all of the ones here in Hamilton, except for one that I know of, do have a candidate chosen. So if you have some Liberal now that wants to come and be part of the party that is in a riding that's chosen a candidate already, what are you supposed to say to that candidate? You know, all the time and money that you've spent on your nomination, well, too bad, because we've got a different guy. I don't think that's fair to the candidates who have worked very hard for the Conservative Party from the beginning and are just waiting for that writ to drop.
Right. And so what do you guys think is going to happen? Let's say Justin Trudeau does lead the Liberals into the next election. I imagine it's going to be a very what's the best word to describe it? It won't be competitive, that's for sure, but it will be nasty, I think. And there will be lots of attacks. There will be some surprises, some stories about both candidates, both leaders. But what are you guys looking to see, and what do you guys think is going to happen in, I presume, in October? I can't imagine the Liberals are going to try to pull the plug early on an inevitable defeat. So let's say it is in October. What do you guys think is going to happen?
Well, I think that the one thing Canadians need to be prepared for is the numbers, the way they are in the polls now. That's not what they're going to end up at election day. I think most people in the news understand that, because that's just the nature of campaigns. But Canadians that have been watching the polls, maybe some of you for the first time, you need to understand that those numbers will narrow. So people don't need to be concerned about that, because the numbers are going to be closer as things move around. But I think you're going to see some really desperate attacks from the Liberals. I think you're going to see Pierre probably at his best in antagonizing Justin Trudeau through this. I think he's going to be very frustrated, and you may even see some meltdowns from him at some of his events, because he's used to campaigning, going in, doing fun things, being the hip guy. But the problem is he is so disliked now that he's not going to get that same response. And I think he's going to get continually frustrated as the campaign moves on. And even if he wins his seat, which he's expected to, I think you will see how the election unfolds. He'll probably resign his seat after he wins, and then he will fade into obscurity, unfortunately, until if there is an RCMP investigation that does continue on the SNC-Lavalin obstruction of justice charge, which there is no statute of limitation.
I honestly don't think it's going to go to October of next year. Even Nick Nanos is saying it's not going to go to October of next year, and Nanos polling is generally Liberal leaning. So if he's saying it, I believe it. I think that it's the ground game is going to be what sets this apart, and Canadians can help the EDA of their choice, whether that's Conservative, Liberal, NDP, etc., by getting involved in your EDA and going door knocking and helping and volunteering. That's what's going to make this election, is boots on the ground.
You know, the 2021 election was so nasty from Justin Trudeau the Liberal tactics of wedging Canadians, using the vaccine to wedge Canadians, and using abortion to wedge Canadians. It was so nasty and disappointing to watch. I just hope that the party leaders can actually fight each other with some level of respect for the voter, and not just intensely trying to burn the country down to get the result they want. I'm really hoping that both party leaders can do this with some respect for the electorate and not just try to divide families and divide households like what we saw in the last election. We'll have to leave it there. We'll talk about it much more as the new year progresses. But until then, thank you all for watching. We will see you next week.